How do you create a custom UI table view cell? In this video, that's what I'm going to show you. Now, when you typically create a custom UI table view cell, you want to break it up into two different things. One, taking your design and creating it in Storyboard, and two, creating all of the custom code that will support that design file. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's jump right into it. Now, this is typically what I start with. First, creating my design file. As you can tell from right here, it's a simple UI table view cell that I'm going to build. We're going to have like an image, a main title, a description, a like counter, a star counter, and a review label. Now, this is very simple, very easy. This is a little example that I can use to show you how you can create custom cells. Now, let's jump into Xcode. What I'm going to do is base this project on a master detail application. Now, I'm going to create this as just recipe app cell. Yeah, we can do that. Let's just call it, let's see, let's call the organizational name, let's call it random. Organizational identifier, we can leave that. And for this simple application, we're gonna uncheck the unit testing, pretty much all the unit testing code. We're gonna just remove that for right now. Okay, let's add it there. Yes, good. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now that we created the project, now let's move directly into the storyboard and create our design. Okay, it's a little slow to load. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to locate the main UITableViewController and start our work there. Okay, let's see, get over. Okay, here we go. We're going to start here. Now let's go to the cell, and now what we're going to do here is let's just automatically move it into the custom style. That way we start with a blank canvas. And we also are going to increase the size to let's go back to our design and see how tall this is. I know how to do this. Okay, here we go. Yes, here we go. So it's a height of 85. So we're going to use that as the base in Storyboard. So now, how are we going to set our height? We're going to first click on the table view, which will bring up this over here. And now we're going to just set the height here as 86. Now we're going to set the row height and the estimated height. Okay. I'm going to go back here, remove the custom, which now should make our cell the same height that we did in our table view. Okay, now that we have the height set, let's jump right in and start making the UI. So first thing we're going to add is the image. So let's just grab this, add it in. And what we're going to want to do is make this image a square. And so let's see, what kind of constraints? We're going to add, first we're going to add a constraint to lock the aspect ratio, which is going to be a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. So as you can see right now, we just added the constraint, but yet it's not the 1-to-1 that we're looking for. And so we're going to have to go in and edit that constraint. And to do that, we're going to click the constraint that was just added, click edit, and go down to the multiplier. From here, we're going to add 1-to-1. Okay, now that should set the correct constraint, the correct square constraint. And from here, we're going to just start adding the top, well, the trailing, the top, the bottom, and that should be about it. Well, not the trailing. We're gonna want the leading string. There we go. So we add all of that. Now that's looks pretty good. Next thing, what do we want to do next? Okay, so the next thing we're gonna want to add is the main title, and let's go for the like label over here. So let's grab a label. Let's start right there. Okay, and so as you can see right here, this is like this little blue, I don't even know what this actually is, but to make this pop up, what you have to do is hold the, what is this, the control key on your keyboard and just drag it into like another view and it should pop up. But from here, we're gonna add the so we're not gonna want to add any of that. To make the top constraint pop up, we're gonna add the top to container, and we're also gonna want to add a constraint between the label and the image to a horizontal space. Let's see. Yeah, it looks pretty good. What else? Okay, let's add a image for the like hearts. And we're gonna do the exact same thing we did for the main image. Well, not quite. We're gonna make it a square, so we're gonna add a aspect ratio constraint. I'm gonna do the same thing, make it a 1:1. And from here, we're going to, let's just decrease the size so we can make it a little bit workable for right now. Let me actually zoom in. A little bit more. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Over. Yeah, it looks better. Okay, so now we're going to add a, well, you know what? Let's actually add the label for the like hearts first. From here, we're going to add the trailing space container. We're going to add a horizontal space to the image, to the heart image. And then we're going to add a horizontal space between the heart image and the main title. But now, as you can see, the constraint is a little bit too long. What we're going to do is we're going to want to edit that. So click the constraint and set it to probably 4. Let's try 4. Let's see. Okay, so for right now, as you can tell, the UI doesn't necessarily look the way we want it to look. We're gonna have to play around with this and make it and push it around and edit a bunch of the constraints. Now, what I typically find is that new developers have a hard time creating their UI through the constraints. So the only way to really get better at it is to really create a lot of UI with constraints. Like, that's pretty much how I got pretty much good at it, and I think pretty much the main way that you're gonna get better at it. But for right now, as you can tell, it doesn't look what we want. So first thing first, what are we gonna want to edit? Okay, first let's edit this one. We're going to need to add a center vertical. Oh, another thing I forgot to add. On this one, I forgot to add a height constraint. Okay. Then we're going to have to edit that to actually shrink it back down. Let's set this to 17. Okay. Still doesn't look correct, but we're going to keep adding constraints. Okay. We got this one. Correct. Correct. Okay. Another big thing that we're going to need to do is that we're going to, for this particular label, we're going to need to update a setting that you probably haven't really played around with yet. And if you click the label and go on to this tab right here and scroll down to the content hugging priority, we're going to need to update this to 52. And as you can tell, our design looks a heck of a lot better now from that. Now what the setting actually does is it actually tells Xcode to make this label a priority when it tries to resize the UI, meaning that a label typically auto adjusts its size based on the content of the label. But since we have two labels kind of like in the same row, Xcode wouldn't know what label to use before resizing the other one. If it takes both labels and resizes them accordingly based on their content, then which one should it use to set as a priority when it tries to resize the other one? So what we're going to do, what we're telling Xcode is that we're going to make this label, we're going to set this as a higher priority when resizing, I guess you say, this row. And that's exactly what the setting does. Okay, for now we're going to just set its content to 0. Let's change this to that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, and that should take up the entire length up to that image. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot to finish this part 1 of this series. Now in part 2, we're gonna finish creating the storyboard, adding all the elements to that storyboard, and adding any designs and other constraints that's needed. If you get stuck at any moment and you'd like to see the code for this project, don't forget to go to the description for this video and navigate to the GitHub repository. That way you can see the code and even download the Xcode project and run the code for yourself. Now, if you have any comments that suggest I should do things a little bit different, or you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Remember to subscribe so you get the notification of the latest episode in this series.